This video explains how to perform a mid-span break repair to pixels using solder shrink tubes, item number 177. This solution is good for people who do not have a soldering iron or do not wish to solder. It's a little more expensive because these solder shrink tubes have more cost than traditional shrink wrap tube and standard solder, but it can be all done with simply a torch or simple heat. All right, now we have pixels here. We have pixels in this particular case. We have them powered up. The pixels at the beginning of the string are working. We come to this pixel, it's the last pixel working, this pixel and the remaining pixels don't work. Now, if for some reason, let's say for example, this pixel works and this pixel does not, but the remaining pixels work, the same process will apply. So we're going to actually cut out the pixel before the problem and after the problem. So normally you would think I need to cut out only this pixel. We actually want to start here because this pixel, the last working pixel, or what appears to be working, might be bad. It may not be sending data down the line. So the first thing we're going to do, go ahead and note where we need to cut, and we're going to cut right here, cutting these two pixels out and put them back together. First thing we need to do, unplug the power. Now I'm going to cut just slightly off center, closer to the pixels I'm cutting out. That makes sure I have enough length in my wire once I splice this. Now, I'm going to then cut back about 1/4 of an inch of wire, and I am going to then separate these wires so that they're individually accessible. And I'm going to roll them between my fingers just to get all of the wires together to make sure that they're not any sticking out. We're going to then, of course, do the same thing on the other end. And here, 1/4 of an inch roughly, and roll the wires between our fingers. Now, this wire is black. Some wires may be color-coded, which makes them easier to solder back together. You will need to note the type of pixel and the wire. Every manufacturer is different. Holiday Coral pixels often have an indication of positive, data, and negative on the wire. Just read it. It's printed on the side. Some pixels will have a rough or ribbed section on one of the lines indicating, for example, positive. In this particular case, we have that. So make sure that you match up the pixels so that the wiring goes back the same way it came. All right, first thing I'm going to do, identify the wires. So we're going to be soldering this wire and this wire together. I'm going to slide the solder shrink tube over the wire, and we're going to put the bare portion of the wire in the center over the top of this solder. Then I'm going to slide the other end in, and I'm simply going to hit it with a little bit of heat. Doesn't require a huge amount. You should see the solder turn to a different color. The outside will turn the color of the wire. That indicates it's shrunk completely up against the side of the wire and made a good connection. Leave it for a couple of seconds, depending upon the amount of heat. In this particular case, this has a lot of heat. It may take a few moments for this to solidify and harden back to a solid state. Then once I've done that, I'm going to slide on the next one. Put that on there. Okay, that's heating up. All right, give it a few seconds here, wait for it to solidify. You can blow on it if you'd like. Sometimes if you keep a little piece of water in a cup, you can take your finger and then put it on there and transfer some of the heat out of the joint if you're making a lot of these. And finally, the last connection here. Put that on there. Make sure that the wires are overlapping and underneath. Now I'm doing this on a soldering pad, and that's designed to make sure that we don't damage our surface. So if you're doing this on top of some other surface, like a countertop, make sure that it's heat resistant. Okay, so we've gone ahead and soldered them all together. Now we're going to power them up, and we can see that our connection is all perfect again. Now, if you have removed those 2 pixels, that means your string is 2 pixels shorter. And you could either add the pixels in between, or often with a lot of projects, we add pixels that are beyond the standard 50 count or 100 count, and we add them to the end. So you could just add the additional pixels to the end if you need to. And that's how we use solder shrink tubes to splice in a mid-span break.